When you hear the word cult, you might think of Charles Manson, Helter Skelter, people in robes, living on a commune, drinking the Kool Aid, going out together. But I think the most dangerous type of cult is the kind that you don't know you're a part of. So today, I want to talk about the new kind of cult that is targeting gifted kids, empaths, starseeds, and creatives. So let's get into it. This is an expansion on my last video, which is also called the new kind of cult, targeting gifted kids and creatives and empaths. And I think it's a really good topic to get into right now as we enter Sagittarius season while coming out from Scorpio season. And I always like to think about what's going on astrologically when I make these videos, because in my experience, what's going on astrologically absolutely has an effect on some of the themes that we're experiencing in real time. And Scorpio season was and is all about power struggles, power dynamics, death and rebirth and transformation, and shadow work. So digging to the core of our own psyches. And it ideally is an opportunity to see where we've been giving our power away, where we're not depending on our higher selves or our higher power, where we're giving it to a person, place, or thing, or group, like many of us do. So we do have a lot of planets in Scorpio still. I believe Mercury, the planet of communication. We also have Mars was in Scorpio. I think it still is at the time I'm making this video. And Mars is how we take action. So Mars can also be our SEX drive. So that can also absolutely impact the flavor of our relationships and what we are attracting. So there's going to be more emphasis on the psychological workings of a relationship when there's heavy Scorpio energy in the atmosphere. And as we're winding down from these Scorpio themes, we're moving into Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is all about belief systems, ideologies. Hence, probably why I want to talk about cults. Because not only when you have the combination of those energies, like I've mentioned in my honeypot videos, I don't think it's a mistake that most honeypots that we see in pop culture often have a birthday either in Scorpio season, or it's near the cusp of Scorpio Sagittarius or Scorpio Libra, because all three of those signs are about how you impact other people. Libra is the relationship builder. It's all about harmony, beauty, compromise. Scorpio is about getting into the depths of intimacy within those relationships and looking at control and power struggles in a relationship. And then Sagittarius is beliefs. What beliefs do we create from the systems of relationships? So all three signs are very much impacted by relationships. And if we're talking about covert organizations that are using handlers and honeypots, for example, they may specifically target people with those birthdays because those people naturally have an inclination for talking and communicating with a group. So, as I've discussed in a lot of my videos, the interest in cults and why people might be drawn to a cult is obviously because we're human, and we all, somewhere in our psyche are seeking a sense of belonging. But this is also kind of going to piggyback off the video I made yesterday, which was about the connection between gate kids, monarch programming, and how they may have been prepared to lead the disclosure movement. And in that video, we talked a lot about the history, or I don't know, now I'm not remembering if it was that video specifically, or maybe some videos I made earlier in the week, where we went back all the way to the Roswell crash, to Project Stargate, the Gateway tapes, and Robert Monroe's research on brainwave entrainment and consciousness, the CIA's analysis and assessment of the gateway tapes, which talked about the holographic universe and was studying remote viewing and consciousness outside of time and space. In recent videos, I've also discussed the impact that brainwave entrainment that was used in the gateway tapes, how that could have also impacted a generation of children. And then if we're really going back to the start of all of this, why would anyone want to control consciousness or push these kind of tools on children in the first place? You can go back to the government, which again goes back to eventually you see how everything's connected, because you see how a lot of this tech that is being used to groom people and connect people through the internet these days. And the tech, it's the same tech that's being used to target certain individuals. And I've also talked about things like implants and V2K technology, where I don't have any evidence that it's being used modernly on people in real time. Like, I don't have documents of that. But when you look at the US Patents website, there's a crap ton of technology like V2K, like microwave technology and radio wave frequency and synthetic telepathy, voice to skull, remote harassment, all of this kind of tech that's been around since at least the 90s. And I personally don't like to discount the story of thousands of targeted individuals who have experienced gang stalking and that kind of remote control. So I do believe that it's possible that this technology has gotten in the wrong hands, and that's probably why we're not seeing evidence of it. But how do gate kids and empaths and sensitive souls and starseeds play into this? Well, again, if we go back to the creation of the CIA, the technology uncovered at Roswell, and then we go back even further to the origins of the gifted and talented program. So this is going to be the people in society with the highest IQ, because these organizations, religious organizations, or the 13 bloodline families that run everything, according to Fritz Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler. I don't know if Cisco Wheeler co-wrote that book, but I think Fritz Springmeier has a book on the 13 Illuminati bloodlines and the whole kind of pyramid structure of society and how everything kind of trickles down from the top. But at the top, it's these religious type organizations that are trying to control society covertly. So they have an interest in gifted kids, highly sensitive individuals, and those who have psychic abilities, which is going to be the creative people. And I've also noticed in my own life the connection between creative kids, and also obviously gate kids, but creative kids and psychic abilities. And if you go back to the GATE program and how they even tested whether or not kids would be considered to be in the gifted and talented programs in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and honestly, before that, because I have accounts from people on my channel who attended the program in the 50s, but the criteria for getting into these programs was that they picked out the kids who were the creators instead of the copiers. So I do have a whole video on the GATE curriculum if you're interested, and I will link that in my description of this video. So anyways, I'm trying to paint the picture of why these groups of individuals are targeted. And essentially, for me, it all seems to go back down to a long time ago, probably even before the 1900s. And you could probably even look into, is it Tartaria? I haven't looked too much into that, but I've had it mentioned on my channel. And ironically enough, I grew up in Cincinnati, where the architecture is so much like something straight from Tartarian, I hope I'm saying that right, video. And I actually saw another creator talking about it. Somebody gave me a recommendation to watch this video, and I wish I wrote it down so I could give you a shout out right now. So thank you for recommending that for me. And ironically, the first video I clicked on a something about, I can't think of the creator's name either, but I'll link it in my description again when I go back and add my captions and everything. But the first video I clicked on their page was about architecture, Cincinnati architecture in Tartaria. And I thought that was so interesting because that's where I grew up. And the architecture there is absolutely beautiful, but it's also very stunning. It's like, how did we have the tech to make this? And according to Tartarians, I hope I'm saying this right, it's like, I think the whole idea behind that is that it's these civilizations that were running on like resonant frequencies and those buildings that have all the big antennas at top. So I don't know if that was supposed to be a landing for space beings or aliens to land on or something, or if that had something to do with like bells. I think they used bells and frequency. So something like that for, I don't know if that generated free energy or what, but I think that's the idea. And then apparently it was all squashed out sometime in the 1800s by a big mud flood or something like that. And a lot of this stuff was buried underground. I'm not sure. I'd love to hear some more. Well, I'd love to find some more reputable channels that talk about this stuff in detail, because I'm not very well educated on it. I'm just bringing it up because it's something that's mentioned on this channel. And I love just connecting all the dots that we connect over here. And a lot of times I'm connecting the dots because of what you guys share and bring to my attention as well. So thank you for that. And anyways, probably war and consciousness was obviously probably happening well before the 1900s, but the 1900s was when we first, from my own research, saw gifted studies with the first longest run gifted study was by a man named Lewis Terman, who also made the gifted IQ test. And he has a connection to Michael Aquino, who was a military figure who also co-authored a book called From Psyop to Mind War, and also founded the Temple of Set, because Michael Aquino's mother was allegedly part of this gifted program. So if that is the case, that means they were part of a bloodline that was tracked. And then since he was a child, those children are groomed. And then, wow, he ends up in the military, ends up founding Temple of Set, which is an offset of Satanism. And then you can, and then he's also mentioned in the book by Cisco Wheeler and Fritz Springmeier about the Illuminati formula used to create an undetectable total mind-controlled slave that came out in the 90s. Michael Aquino is mentioned as a programmer in that book, and I think he was also sued for things that he was doing to KIDS. So a lot of those dots connect back to eugenics, bloodlines, chosen ones, psychic abilities, because then if we flash forward fast forward into future, so after the 1940s, so 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, Robert Monroe, study of consciousness, remote viewing, the Cold War, the military had an interest in gifted children because other countries like China and the Soviet Union were training psychic spies and they were using children. So then there are some excellent gate videos out there. I want to say, I'm so bad with remembering these creators' names. I just watched one the other day. Again, I'm going to have to link it in my description for you guys to watch. It's a channel that had a lot of subscribers, but their video, I think it was called Gifted and Targeted or something like that. But I think it was that video, and then there was maybe another one by, I want to say Cryptid Candy. Is that a channel? But I watched 2 gate videos recently, and they both did a really great job at showing us the research that's kind of been hidden about the gate program. So there's so many good gate creators out there who are like digging this stuff up and trying to make sense of it all. But the gist of what I got from those videos is that there's declassified documents that talk about basically how GATE and the gifted program was like a big experiment on consciousness. And most kids, even if you were not in the GATE program, you still probably remember hearing either the Gateway Tapes audio or something very similar in the hearing test. And in my video from yesterday, when I tied GATE to Monarch and the disclosure movement, I also mentioned kids who have hearing disabilities or eye disabilities, because I'm wondering if this was also a way to screen for psychic abilities. And it was passed off as traditional hearing tests or eyesight tests. But if you're anything like me and you had eye tests or hearing tests when you were a kid, I had a birth defect. I had early childhood surgery at 18 months because I had a lazy eye. And then they figured out part of my retina was detached and it's retinal coloboma. So I have partial vision loss, but my whole childhood was essentially me doing different eye tests. And it's literally like, was a huge thing in my life, like my whole childhood. And it's so weird because once I became an adult, it's like, no one cares anymore. I haven't been to an eye doctor in years. And honestly, I don't feel like it affects my life so much anymore, but it was such a huge thing when I was a kid. And it makes me wonder, was I being groomed for something or targeted? The other odd thing about my personal experience in GATE was all of the experiences that I had where I felt like teachers and the program was prepping me to be a public speaker. I always did public speaking when I was young, and then I grew up to be like the captain of the dance team and on the cheerleading squad and all of these like very public facing positions where I was in front of people. And then I had that thing for the longest time thought I wanted to be like a famous musician, and then I realized how corrupt Hollywood is and realized I want nothing to do with that world. And I also realized that music is kind of a psyop too, or it definitely can be. And the odd thing about it is when I was writing a lot of music, most of my music was like very depressed. So I found music as a great way to channel that depression and let my depression live somewhere, let that anxiety live there, kind of like in the same way that I'm processing stuff in real time on camera with you guys, and it's living in this video online now. But back in the day before handheld cell phones and cameras and computers and all this stuff, it was like come home from school, play some music, write a song, and write poetry. And I've talked to a lot of other GATE kids who are extremely creative in that way. And they're also even kids who weren't in GATE, because since GATE was one big experiment, I do think that there's a lot of people who maybe would have tested right under that top 5%, or they weren't there that day, or their parents kept them out of the program, or whatever the reason, but they would have been a GATE kid had circumstances not been different and had GATE been less of one big experiment. Because what it sounds like is like different schools had different programs for this stuff, and it wasn't just the same program throughout every school. Some schools didn't even have it, so it was all different. But my point is that the connection that GATE kids or creative kids not only have with psychic abilities, they've always been creators and writers, and thus influencers of emotion. Because if you're writing music and you're sharing it and you have a desire to be famous or be seen or put yourself out there, you have influence over the collective field. So not only are the things you write about going to be topics that appeal to people, but how you shift somebody's emotion and their emotional experience through the journey of song and sharing your music. In the same way that actors and actresses are shifting your emotional states when you're watching them on screen. So somebody pointed out to me the other day that the Crowleys, as in Aleister Crowley, as in the father of Satanism, own Netflix. I did not verify that, but so I'm taking what they said. So you can probably verify yourself if you want to verify it, but that's not the first time I've heard something sketchy about Netflix. And if you look at Netflix and you see the primary content that's on there, it's all satanic, horror movies, scary stuff. So it makes sense to me. I'm like, I'm not surprised at all if that's the case, because Netflix and media is also controlling our perception. So I'm taking a long time to basically talk about what I mean to talk about with the cults. So if you're still with me, thanks for being here. But why that was important to show you guys is because creative people are valuable for a lot of reasons. Not only for their ability to shift the collective energy field, but also because certain institutions, certain programmers, certain religious organizations believed that creative children also had psychic abilities that could channel entities. And if we're going to get really religious here and talk about like religious wars and the end times and what a lot of people believe, that the end times are here or they're coming or whatever, then we can see that these organizations that really believe in these entities and what these entities are saying. Like if you look back at Monarch programming literature, for example, there's accounts of them like dunking children in water so that they would lose consciousness or dissociate. And when they did, they would be able to bring through an entity that would tell them the future. And that is in alignment with a different technique, with rumors of the alleged Project Looking Glass, where they had psychics and children use this machine that they would sit in the middle of, and then they could predict the outcome of the future. And it was working up until 2012. And what I found interesting is that CERN was created in 2012. So a lot of people also have, there's rumors that CERN is like trying to create a portal to hell or something. So that's another weird coincidence. But back to the idea of cults and influence and why certain people are targeted. Like I said, they're targeted for their ability to influence. And now what I'm starting to kind of put together is that I think long ago, these religious groups and organizations may have predicted this end times, or whether they predicted it or they're trying to create it, I don't know. Still trying to understand how law of attraction and the world and the holographic universe works, because then you get teachers like Bashar who say that you can switch multiple realities, and then Vadim Zeeland and Transurfing Reality says you can also switch to another universe depending on what you align yourself to. And I've actually experienced that phenomenon in my life myself. So me personally, I don't think that the apocalypse timeline or the end times timeline is the one and only destiny for our earth. I think it's similar to the Mayan calendar, which I made a whole video on about gate kids opening a portal, and the Mayan calendar and this timeline split that everybody's talking about in 2030. But did you know that in 2011, the Mayan calendar allegedly ended, and people were freaking out because they thought that meant that in the world, or that the world would end in 2012, but it didn't. And instead, we started noting a lot of glitches in the matrix around that time. So the Mandela effect, very real. And if you're anything like me, you may have started to wake up to the fact that you're creating your own reality at this time, which is very interesting because the Mayan calendar doesn't say that the world ended then. The Mayan calendar didn't say that the world ended then. It said that we shifted into a state where humanity was in an experimental phase of co-creating reality. So I believe that we are in a trial period. Humanity is in a trial period to see, are humans capable of unlocking these extra levels of DNA? Can we use it for good rather than use it like we did in World War II, where we're creating nuclear energy and technology that can wipe out the entire world, which will affect the galaxy and other universes beyond ours. So I have, like I said, have experienced many things in my own life that leads me to believe that I am shifting timelines, because one of the reasons I talk about emotions a lot on this channel and being aware of our own emotions is so you can shift too. Now, this is where the line is going to get a little, we really have to draw a line in the sand here, because this is where the manipulation between cult ideology and true new age free thinkers begins. So if these organizations knew that some kind of end times or some kind of alien event or some kind of Mayan calendar, whatever, was going to happen because they had tools to predict the future, and if they prepared a generation of kids to be psychic soldiers, to open portals, to play the gateway tapes for, which ended up dysregulating their nervous system. Again, I made a whole video about that called The Impact of the Gateway Tapes. And that was looking at the effects of the gateway tapes and brainwave entrainment on children under 7. But turn it around. If these organizations were intentionally trying to cultivate psychic senses in children, which I believe they did, because again, using myself as an example, as much as I wanted to be a famous musician, I ended up going down a different path. Like, I realized that a lot of my music writing came from depression and disempowerment and mind control, which I wasn't aware of at the time, and substance abuse, which is very common in highly sensitive, intelligent, gifted, or creative individuals. They often self-medicate with substances, especially if they've been down the path of doctors where they try to medicate with prescribed medication, and if it doesn't work for them, huge thing that people do. This is like the path that I went down, is like medication wasn't working for me, talk therapy wasn't working for me, like I did not feel resonance with my therapist or my doctors. And I think that I've heard people say, are therapists handlers? Are they trying to keep you in lower states of consciousness? And with that, I might have to agree in some cases. Maybe not them intentionally, but the system keeps us in lower states of consciousness. So for me, my path was, my inner voice telling me to get sober. And I got sober, met a lot of people like me, neurodivergent, creative, empathic, may consider themselves starseeds. Felt like I met other indigo children, so people highly creative, people here to break down, bring in new systems and break down the old systems and whatnot. And people who genuinely cared about other people. The special thing about indigos that I've met is that they have the ability to really empathize with somebody and to like feel their emotions. And this is why empaths and creatives and gate kids struggle with boundaries, and this is why they're targeted often by these occult groups and by potential cults and cult ideologies. And one of the biggest cult ideologies I'm thinking of right now is the New Age movement. And not for a second do I want to crap on any of the New Age tools or all of it, because like everything, I think that good systems that are meant to empower us have also been inverted. So this is, again, where it's so important to use your discernment, because right now there is a New Age movement. So whether that is the rave culture where they use flashing lights and substances and microdosing. Okay, so microdosing, putting your mind in a suggestible state so you are prone to conditioning. Psychedelics under the guise of, we're helping you heal trauma, we're helping you integrate it. However, when you look on paper, these people are popping psychedelics once a week and doing guided shamanic ceremonies like once a week. And I don't think that's how we're supposed to be using plant medicine. I think that's another way to gaslight ourselves into believing that we're not addicts. So not to mention all of that, all of these New Age gurus and shamans, self-proclaimed shamans, self-proclaimed gurus, self-proclaimed Pleiadian starseeds, creating their own little cult followings where you depend on them and they're funneling you into their system. And I think that there's a difference between come to my school of thought and I'll guide you through a mushroom ceremony every week. And so in other words, you have to depend on me. I'm making an income off of you. If you heal, then I don't get to make an income off of you anymore. Versus somebody like me who's like, the answer is inside of you. You are your own God. I just want to share tools to help you reach those higher states of consciousness in yourself. And those tools are not always free. And yes, sometimes my tools do take time and energy to do. So I have a balance of free tools available for people who are trying to get to the bottom of their emotional beliefs and patterns. And then I also, if I'm putting 5 hours of my time into researching your astrology chart, then yes, I'm going to get paid for it. But those readings are designed to help you get the information, deliver it to you once so you can sit with it. It's not so you can come back every week. You can if you want, but it's not required. So I think that any teacher who is telling you that you don't have the answers inside of you, that you need to continue to come to them, and they keep positioning themselves on a pedestal or positioning themselves as an expert, which is a popular thing that people talk about on social media, especially when you're on Instagram and you're seeing all these coaches advertise their services. It's like, you got to position yourself as an expert. We got to do all the social media trends. Every 5th video has to be about, trying to promote your services or whatever. So there's a script that these people are following. And to me, I started to get disheartened by all of this stuff on social media in the last handful of years, because it's everything feels so fake. Everybody's always trying to sell you something. And this is also where the term spiritual bypassing comes from. This idea that we're not going to discuss the lower ugly emotions And I understand why people think law of attraction can be shameful. And that is not my intention when I share tools like the law of attraction. I'm saying with the law of attraction that our emotions are guideposts for us. And there is a trap where we can over-identify with certain lower vibrational emotions, like I did for a long time. And we can try to cover those emotions with alcohol, with food, with relationships. And we feel shameful for having them. So rather than doing the inner work and like processing what happened, we take blame for something that was done to us in childhood, for example. A popular example of this might be some kind of sex abuse in your childhood, where you feel internal feelings of guilt and shame about it. And you think that you somehow think that it's your fault. And then you somehow have been conditioned to protect the perpetrator, even though you're the victim, but you feel like, especially if it was like an adult or somebody that you were supposed to be able to trust, often victims are like shamed into keeping quiet about it. So I'm not trying to discount anyone's experience with that, especially having had similar experiences myself that really kept me in lower states of emotions and of lower vibrational state for a lot of my life until I understood what my emotions were trying to tell me, and until I stopped trying to self-medicate, which is this trap that a lot of people are getting in. And then you've got all these new age teachers teaching like micro-dosing and doing it every day. So rather than getting to the root of trauma, do you notice how so many doctors these days are like, let's just do ketamine, let's just do micro-dosing. But it's like, why isn't anybody talking about the systems that shape us, literally the systems that shape us in elementary school at birth, that split our personality by like these traumatic birth systems, by how we're raised by our parents, by what creates attachment styles in our relationships. That all stems back to childhood. And if we don't understand what those tools are, then it's very easy to just start blaming all these other things that are in our life today, because it might make more sense to blame what's in front of you versus what happened to you 30 years ago. And again, my channel is not about blame. It's about understanding systems. So when we understand how a system works, when we understand how mind control works, we can start to unravel it and start to realize like, okay, that makes sense. Like why I am wired the way I am. Like somebody was shaping me, something was guiding me. But hopefully all of this wakes you up to how powerful you are. The fact that you notice these manipulation tactics from people around you, and then you hopefully feel empowered enough to take action and to say, I do not consent to these systems of control. Like me, for example, I read that Monarch programming book, and I was smoking MJ at the time, and I was under the impression like it's a normal thing. My friends are doing it. Doctors say it's good for me. It helps people sleep. It's fun. It's not hurting anyone. I connect to spirit more when I'm in it, which was all a lie, by the way. But the second I saw it in that Monarch programming literature, and I saw how it's used for programming, and I could connect the dots in my own life, which was huge for me, with the early childhood surgery, with the high IQ as a child, with the guiding and being groomed to go down a certain path, like all of those dots connected for me. And it's like becomes very obvious that they, whoever they are, want us in lower states of consciousness. And then when you learn about brainwave states, brainwave entrainment, how substances affect that, you start to see this is not for our highest good. Maybe it can be used in tandem with a trauma counselor and somebody who's really going to guide you, but who is vetting all of these self-proclaimed shamans? They're vetting themselves. And if you really, I'm not saying everyone is like this, because there are good teachers out there and people using this responsibly, but there are also a crap ton of ego-driven narcissists who are infiltrating the new age movement using these tools, and they've figured out a way to control people and isolate them from their friends and families to make them think that they're special or chosen, so they can prey on them, so they can harvest their sensual energy, and they can push substances on them, and they can feel a sense of power because they're your guru, and they can lead you through these, these healing circles all the time. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with healing circles, but you have to, what I'm teaching is paying attention to who is leading them. How do you feel inside? Are they leaving you feeling dependent on them for answers? Are you worshiping them like a god? Or are they empowering you to see the God within you? Are they treating you like a peer or a client? I like to treat everyone that I read for as a peer, as somebody who is an equal human to me, I may be more knowledgeable about human design and astrology than you, but you might be more knowledgeable about something else than I am. So in my head, we're equal. And it really rubs me the wrong way when you see all these like new age gurus and wannabe cult leaders where it's like it doesn't seem like they're really trying to help people when they're just trying to hide information from people or guide them down another path where it's not teaching them to ultimately develop spiritual discernment. So if you're trying to exploit someone's trauma, their vulnerability, their, not realizing, like when somebody's trying to heal from trauma, it's a way of exploiting somebody when you're preying on that, and then you're really just trying to keep them in this perpetual state of healing. And that's another trap that I found myself in a handful of years ago when I started to get more involved in these new age type of communities and like the healing circles and the yoga classes and all this stuff that was starting to become trendy. And again, 1900s disclaimer. I like crystals. I use crystals. I wear crystals. I think they're a great way to protect your energy. I love making crystal jewelry. I love yoga. I love a lot of the new age tools. I love meditation. I would be open to healing circles, but I don't depend on that stuff. And I think that's great that people find connection in them. But again, it all comes down to who the practitioner is, what your inner discernment is saying about them. And that's why I think that there's a fine line between new age cult guru and somebody who's really just a living, breathing example of what it is like to embody those higher states of consciousness, third eye open, and they're showing you how to do it through their own living of that. And I watched a wonderful video the other day. I think it was by The Alchemist. I don't have time to watch a ton of videos these days, but when I do, they tend to stick with me. But The Alchemist, I think, was talking about chosen ones and kind of like the dangerous ideology that has been created, where there's a lot of people out there that think, labeling themselves as a chosen one means that they're special. It's kind of can also be a way of spiritual bypassing to think that you're chosen. And it reminds me of the rapture talk and all these Christian people who were sure that the rapture was coming, and they had dates that they made, and then they sold their houses and they sold their money, and some lady even gave up her kids, and then the rapture didn't come. I have no idea what happened to any of those people or what they're doing now, or if rapture talk is a thing and they're still talking about it. I don't know, but that just reminds me of that kind of trap where I just watched like 5 minutes of rapture talk, and I'm like, these people are so cringe because they're like, oh, like, let me pray for you, like, you're not going to get chosen, you're not going to be saved, I know what's best, I'm going to give up my own kids because God told me. But again, spiritual discernment, energy speaks on a gut level, on a soul level. Somebody can mimic the behavior, somebody can say the words, but if it doesn't feel right, we have to trust our gut. So I think the goal with all of these new age communities coming up and these new age ideologies, like telling people they're a starseed or a chosen one. Again, I know I use that term, and I use it because it's one way that people identify themselves. And it's also kind of, at the same time, attempting to capture your attention to remind you that just because you feel like you're a starseed, just because you feel like you're enlightened and chosen, I think we also have to have reality checks with ourselves and be able to humble ourselves. Because if we can't have those reality checks with ourselves, and if we're ever trying to push some kind of ideology on anyone else and try to like act like we're holier than thou, like we're smarter or more enlightened or more awakened or more chosen than somebody, then we've lost our way, and we're part of that conditioning and mind control that's happening. And you're acting out part of this cult ideology, because what it's doing is contributing to the separation. You're a covert narcissist anytime you have that kind of attitude. If you're that kind of person. I'm not saying everyone who thinks that they're a starseed is a covert narcissist. I'm saying I've met some, and I'm saying that there are people who have infiltrated these communities who use the language, act the act, but when you observe their behaviors, when you are in their energy field and you feel them, then it's very apparent that these people are not the starseeds or the awakened one or the enlightened ones, especially if they're preying on people who are vulnerable, if they're trying to be sexually inappropriate with people, if they are teaching ideologies like you have to continue to do more psychedelics to be enlightened, if they're pushing constant attendance of festivals and stuff where there's music and flashing lights, but certain things that are played on screen. And I'm thinking mostly like the Hollywood glamorization of New Age, where they try to get these new artists who kind of look the part, like they could appeal to New Age type people, and they may have some kind of New Age themes in their song. But then if you like get up and go to their concerts, watch how they're dressing, watch what they're promoting, it starts to become clear that they're just the casual face for this. And they're still promoting these lower consciousness ways of being, I guess, like whether that is energy harvesting through having you attend their concerts and through group sex and things like that, disguised as free love, or pushing substances on you and promoting toxic positivity, which again, there's a difference between somebody who still feels the spectrum of emotions. Like, just because I choose to be positive doesn't mean that I don't dip into fear, anxiety, guilt, shame, trauma. Like I probably do at some point every day because I'm a human. But the difference for me now is that rather than over-identifying with those emotions and rather than shaming myself for having them, now it's like, you're anxious right now. Okay, Alex, I'm the mother of your inner child. What do you need right now? I can see that you're wanting to eat some junk food because you feel anxious about something. So let's sit with that for a minute. How about instead of reaching for the junk food, how about we meditate for a couple minutes, we pray about it, we ask, what is this trying to teach us? And then through meditation, I've always found that the answers will come and it will lead me to whatever ultimately was the problem. So my point is that emotions like anxiety, like fear, like guilt, like shame, like anger, revenge, etc., are secondary emotions to something else that's going on, to some kind of thought that is not suiting us. And thoughts and emotions are so interconnected, and I believe the thoughts and emotions are what create reality. So whether it's creating separate universes or shifting you to a new hologram, we can't argue that thoughts and emotions also influence your own behavior. So naturally, if I'm thinking like a victim, speaking like a victim, talking like a victim, acting like a victim, I'm going to keep myself in this victimhood life. I'm going to be a red shiny target to the bull who's the predator, who's spotting me based on my energy and based on my own victim mentality, versus if I have that brief feeling of like being a victim and being scared, but I work myself up the scale and I say, okay, how can I nurture my inner child right now? Do I need to do some journaling and get it out on paper? Do I need to call a friend or a mentor? Do I need to do some self-help stuff? Like maybe I have an interest in astrology or human design or some kind of other tools that can help me understand this or reframe it in a more positive way. Do I need to go out in nature? Do I need to work out? So figuring what that emotion is trying to tell you and doing the action that is going to help alleviate that emotion. So when you do the action, like when I go take a walk in nature, like I'm not sad anymore. And I don't have a desire to sit around and eat Cheetos. Not that I even like Cheetos, but I'm just saying when I do things that are in my highest interest, like I'm naturally acting in a way that's going to naturally put me on my higher timeline. So a happier timeline, a more empowered timeline. I'm going to manifest more positive things when I'm very self-aware of my own emotional patterns. So that is what I really hope that you guys get from watching my channel, and what I really hope to nail home for people is that at the end of the day, we all have a piece of source energy inside of us, I believe. And I believe part of this age of Aquarius, this new age movement, like the truth of it is that we're waking up to this fact that, in a way, like we are one, but not in the hive mind scary way, but it's like we're all part of that source energy. And we're going to work best as a whole when everybody can dig inside themselves, bring out that gold that gift that, you know, source or God or the universe like implanted in you, which again, why I like astrology and human design, because I think it helps us recognize like our unique traits and our gold in this lifetime. So like for me, I am really interested in breaking down old structures and systems and like finding new ways and more empowering ways to do things. And that's part of my, you know, blueprint or makeup, and whatever skills that I have based on my astrology chart just helps me understand how I can really embody that. And then by doing so, like, I'm happy. I hope you can see it in my face that I'm happy. And I know I can, versus like fake happiness that I used to chase through alcohol, through men, through, you know, fame or whatever. So now I find these things through embodying my own unique purpose. And I truly think that everybody has their own unique purpose. And I think the point of all of this, even as crazy as everything is around us and AI taking over all the jobs and whatnot, and cults trying to infiltrate our creative and comedy scenes, and media trying to infiltrate our minds, at the end of the day, it has the power to teach us something and to remind us to step back into our own power. So those systems are just there to kind of, you know, if we're not claiming our own power, we're not taking control of our life, we're not being a conscious creator, then there's systems that will do that for us. So my whole thing is like, let's wake up to our own power and be conscious creators. And then we can be conscious about the world that we want to live in, and not just like always give our power away, especially in these conspiracy niches like, oh my God, the elite. Like, I know we talk about it all the time, but I talk about it to remind people that it's going on, so then we can bring ourselves out of it. So it's like, the point of talking about this stuff is not to be like, oh, these elite are trying to destroy us and everything is so bad and there's no way out of it and it's just hopeless. The point is to recognize that if we do not wake up to the power inside of us, then yeah, it can get bad. But it always comes back down to you. And if we're not the problem, you're not the solution. And at this point in the game of life, we also have to wake up and recognize these systems aren't going to save us. Obviously, they're not working necessarily for our highest good, unless that highest good is to wake us up and remind us of our own power. But it's like, we've got to be the foot soldiers out here making the changes. We can't depend on other people to do it for us. And that's just like why me personally, why I have goals of homestead at some point. And I want to be, when I have the money to adopt more than the 4 dogs that I have now, I really, really hope that I can have a homestead full of animals and care for the abused and forgotten animals on the planet and make a difference in that way. And I think there's so many ways to make a difference. I think people can make a difference by growing their own food and natural food and finding natural energy sources, maybe positive uses for AI. Maybe your thing is one-on-one coaching and mentorship. Maybe it is teaching people how to live a healthier lifestyle. Maybe it's coming up with workout plans. Like, it looks different for all of us, but at the end of the day, what the mind control is keeping us from is our highest purpose as an individual. And if we're not tapped into our highest purpose as an individual, that's when the world starts to look like it has been, like where it starts to look like it's in chaos and shambles, because you've got people working for money. They're not doing their God-given gifts and talents, because every time we do embody our highest passion and do, you know, the thing that lights us up, it's literally like a beacon of light, and it attracts other people like a moth to a flame. So when you wake up and you're in your light, it attracts other people. It brings more light on the planet. Light is just codes of information. Light equals information. A small candle can light up a dark room. So your light is so important. Why else would they be feeding on it? Why else would they be trying to, you know, persuade you to do drugs and alcohol and have, you know, casual sex with people that you don't care about, that you're not spiritually connected to, because they're trying to harvest your energy because they want your light. And if you're not, you know, up in your light, then they can continue to operate in the dark and do whatever it is they're trying to do, whether that's loosh harvesting or whatnot. So anyways, I think that feels like a good place to end this talk today. And I hope you learned something about how to protect yourself. If you do need additional tools to learn how to protect your own boundaries better, I do also teach human design. So I have that listed in my description, and human design for me was a good way for me to recognize my energetic boundaries, including where I learned that have an open emotional solar plexus center, which is the true definition of an empath. And once I learned how to turn that on and off and recognize what was mine versus somebody else's, it was a huge game changer in my life. That's why I'm passionate about teaching astrology today and human design, because I believe both are great tools for helping people understand their own energy field. And like I said, this is not something you have to do a million times. So it's like a one-time investment, and you learn about yourself and it can help you move forward. So if you're interested in that, description or link is in my description. I also do one-on-one readings, and then I have free tools for you, like my ESP development, not my ESP development. That's another tool that you can kindly purchase if you would like, but I do have free tools like my fear inventory and 21-day habits tracker, which I think is really helpful. And again, you can like leave a tip and pay for me if you want to support the work that I do on this channel so I can keep making videos like this. I highly, highly appreciate that. But also those tools are there for you for free if you need them. So take advantage of them and use them, because they will help you. They helped me, and my goal is to help you. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.